Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Weir, and I gotta tell you, I love life. But when I'm not being a husband, a father, a grandfather, an author, or a practicing chiropractor, I'm the host of the television show Loving Life with Dr. Tim Weir. I love to cook. I love to travel. I like to spend time with people who do what they love and love what they do. Join me and Elvis for the next 30 minutes as we help you discover how to love life. Hey, we're in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and I'm with Dr. Mark Evans. I'm amazed already.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Oh, I'm telling you it is. We hear so much nowadays about where kids are going, what kids are doing, and I've been a musician all my life. You're a musician. Where are we headed?
Well, I'm concerned, and that's why I have done some of what I've done in founding a movement called cultural conservation. You were holding a copy of my previous book called Mark My Words with a subtitle, How to Discover the Joy of Music, the Delight of Language, and the Pride of Achievement in the Age of Trash Talk and MTV. I've become concerned about students coming out of school unfamiliar with any music other than what they've heard through MTV. Many haven't read a book that hasn't been assigned to them. Many others don't know even the basic facts of American history. They don't know why we celebrate the 4th of July. There was a girl in the class and teacher walked in and said, we have a veteran here who's going to tell you all about Pearl Harbor, and the girl piped up and said, who's she? And this is what we're dealing with. It's come about for several reasons. We confuse, first of all, change and progress. Russell Kirk once said that change is not necessarily progress. It can be a devouring conflagration rather than a torch of progress. Secondly, we confuse fame and quality. We live in what I call a celebrity culture, in which people tend to admire those who are famous for any reason and not for their accomplishments. And third, we confuse technology and wisdom. And there was once a time when only birds twittered, Google was a comic strip, and the web was something that was the product of a wise spider called Charlotte in a book called Charlotte's Web. So having looked at that, I said, who can help with this? Well, the three places we usually look for assistance don't work. We look to academia, but academics are terribly concerned with being au courant with the latest trends, being fashionable. The government we turn to, but as everybody knows, the government tends to make everything worse rather than better. And finally, we turn to the entertainment industry, and Hollywood is certainly part of the problem. Yeah. So I started to explain this, talking about the loss of our music, our art, our books, theater, the decline of the English language. Today, a modern day Hamlet would say, to be or not to be, you know, like that is a question. And so I wrote this book, started cultural conservation. We have a website, www.culturalconservation.org. And the purpose is to provide parents and grandparents with resources to see to it that their children and grandchildren don't lose our culture. And Ronald Reagan said that the loss of freedom is only one generation away. And I think the same is true about the arts. Well, at the end of the book, I said it's better to light candles than to curse the darkness. One of my mentors, Richard Armour, used to call himself a realist with dreams. I don't think this can be fixed in a day or a week or a month or a year, exactly. But I think we should start. Yeah. So my attempt at lighting candles brings me to my next book. This is my current brand new book called Our Musical Heritage. And this is my guided tour of 4 genres of American music. The subtitle on this one is From Yankee Doodle to Carnegie Hall to Broadway to the Hollywood soundstage. And I talk about all those areas of music.
Now, listen. Because you're coming from this standpoint of all these things you're talking about. And it's not like you have never had any experience in all of this. Your experience started when you were 7, 8 years old in a Hollywood studio.
Yes, I grew up in a music department at a large Hollywood studio. I was very privileged to have studied with 2 world-renowned composers, Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco and Roy Harris. And Dr. Castelnuovo Tedesco, the maestro as he was known, many years before me, had trained Andre Previn and John Williams and Henry Mancini and Nelson Riddle and Jerry Goldsmith and Johnny Mandel. And I also had guidance and advice from people like Miklos Rozsa and Bernard Herrmann. And I've been immersed in music my whole life. I got involved in broadcasting quite by accident, started a TV and radio show called Mark My Words. But music is where my heart is. Right. And people don't realize there are fascinating things about the history of our own music that we shouldn't lose. Most people don't realize, for example, that there was a composer who signed the Declaration of Independence. Really? Yes. His name was Francis Hopkinson. He was more important as a great patriot because he was involved in designing the seal of the United States, and he was one of the premier designers of the American flag. But he also wrote some songs which earned the great praise of his friend Thomas Jefferson, and he dedicated them to his other good friend, George Washington. So that's a great pedigree for early American music. But interestingly enough, his music was performed many, many years later by Margaret Truman. Margaret Truman was a soprano. She sang in a recital, and she was panned by the music critic of the Washington Post, Paul Hume. And Hume, being a critic, was used to suffering the slings and arrows of the public and the people that disagreed with him. But in this case, he got a letter, and the letter said, "Sir, if we ever meet, you will need a new nose and 2 beefsteaks for black eyes." And what shocked Hume was the signature was from the singer's father, Harry S. Truman, President of the United States.
That is funny.
After Truman went back to Independence, Missouri, Hume eventually visited him. They shook hands, they made up, and they sat down and played a 4-handed duet on the piano.
Is that cool or what? Change the channel. We got some more coming up. This is amazing.
Uptone Pictures is a full-service script-to-screen production company which can help you create the proper messaging for any number of applications, with spacious state-of-the-art studio offering green screen, mocap, and practical stages, along with a team of professionals who will make you and your business shine. So what are you waiting for? Call us at 919-649-3587 and schedule your appointment today. It's time we put your imagination into motion.
Hey, welcome back. We're with Dr. Mark Evans, the author of Mark My Words and Our Musical Heritage and Other Things. There's so much that we've lost.
We have, and some of it, I mean, there are many great major musical figures like Lowell Mason, who put music in America's public schools, or John Knowles Payne, who was America's first music professor. And I talk about, of course, about musical theater and film music. I was very privileged to have as a mentor a wonderful gentleman named Irvin Talbot, who was music director at Paramount for 45 years. And it is fascinating to look at the origins of where some of these things come from. But you never can tell musical theater, for example, Richard Rodgers had written many great musicals with Lawrence Hart, and everybody thought of Rodgers and Hart as a permanent team. What happened was that Hart had some personal problems and didn't want to work on a show with Rodgers, which was to be called Away We Go. It was based on a play called Green Grow the Lilacs. And Rodgers then formed a new partnership with Oscar Hammerstein, who had been working with Jerome Kern for many years and had written Showboat. Well, the new team, Rodgers and Hammerstein, tried their show out of town. And in those days, Broadway shows were full of a lot of loud, active sounds, and they would always have a group of chorus girls open on stage. This thing opened with a lady sitting on stage churning butter. They made one small change. They changed the name of the show from Away We Go to Oklahoma.
Oh my goodness.
And of course it became the historic Great American Musical for many years.
Wow.
And many years later, Rodgers and Hammerstein looked at making a musical of Pygmalion, and they decided it couldn't be done. And of course then Lerner and Loewe came along and did it as My Fair Lady. But the other side of that was that Lerner wanted to make a musical about a family of singers in Austria. And Frederick Loewe turned it down and said he had no intentions of writing music for people who would yodel. And as a result of that, they didn't do it. But Rodgers and Hammerstein did, and they made The Sound of Music. So you have these two great teams who could have written each other's shows. You just never know what will happen. Now, we can have a lot of fun with stories like this, but there's an important message, and the message is that we should not ever lose our great music. And there's more to music than rock and rap and pop. The story of jazz is in here, for example, and it's a tremendous story of how the art of jazz grew out of African American culture in New Orleans and Chicago and New York and became an international language.
Let's talk about music. We've talked about where we're at. Where can kids go from this point? You know, I've said this. I think American Idol is great, but there's a bunch of people coming out who have no history, nothing behind them, being pushed out into the limelight. They haven't lived life.
Well, this is very true, and of course, it's very hard to go into a group of people, particularly if you're talking about children or teenagers, and try to explain to them that a lot of the people that they admire, in many cases, can't really sing or play very well.
Exactly.
They're products of a publicity machine. Vincent Falcone was Frank Sinatra's last musical director, and he wrote a book about his life working with Sinatra, and he made a comment that if some of these people had their amplifiers unplugged, they would all have to go home. And what I have found to be the case is that we tend to like what we know. Right. Vincent Price once wrote a book about art called I Like What I Know. And it's, of course, a play on the phrase, I know what I like. Right. But people typically like what they're familiar with. And when I've talked to children or teenagers or students or people of any age, because you're never too young or too old to start, I find the people who are interested in real music, or for that matter, real books, or the development of the English language, or any of these subjects, there's always a case where someone says, oh yes, well, my parents introduced me to it, or I had an uncle or an aunt or a grandmother, or maybe I had a wonderful teacher, but somebody early in life interests them in this. Because my view is, if you know the music that I talk about in our musical heritage, and this is American music, there's other great music from all over the world. Of course, in American music, we had a great many wonderful emigres who came to this country from all over. But if you've grown up listening to this music, you learn to love it, you learn to develop a discriminating sense of taste. Right. And as a result of that, that solves the problem. So I'm a great advocate of self-education, of learning at home. The family that learns about music together will develop that sense of appreciation. And of course, that's one of the things we do. I started this foundation, Cultural Conservation, which is a 501c3, and our purpose is basically to provide people with the tools for education in the home education for the family, because I think if you grow up learning about jazz, learning about the great film scores, learning about, we haven't talked a lot about the great classical American composers, like my teacher Roy Harris, who wrote 13 symphonies, was one of the greatest American composers of concert music. He was born in a log cabin on February the 12th in Lincoln County, Oklahoma, and that's why he spent a lot of time writing music about and inspired by Abraham Lincoln and figures like Aaron Copland and Howard Hanson. And if you learn about those people, you learn about their contributions. As a result of all that, when you see American Idol or you watch MTV or you're exposed to these things, you have a basis for comparison.
Yeah. Let's come back, and I'd like to hear you play and have fun doing that.
All right, I'll tell you a couple more stories, and I'll do them at the piano.
All right, don't change the channel. We got more coming up.
Uptone Pictures is a full-service script-to-screen production company which can help you create the proper messaging for any number of applications, with spacious state-of-the-art studio offering green screen, mocap, and practical stages, along with a team of professionals who will make you and your business shine. So what are you waiting for? Call us at 919-649-3587 and schedule your appointment today. It's time we put your imagination into motion.
Hello, Dr. Tim.
Wow. Thank you for being with me today.
It's my pleasure.
Listen, there are so many genres of music, and I've just been sitting here listening to you. You can do, I mean, you pop in and out of them, and tell me what you, I'm just blown away. I'm telling you, I'm blowing gaskets here.
Well, I was always enormously interested in improvising. I'm a composer, so when I had strict classical European teachers, I didn't always want to do what I was told because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to improvise and create. And so I've always worked on all sides of the musical fence.
Wow.
And it's interesting, we were talking about our musical heritage, and when you look at American music, there's just a tremendous cornucopia of sounds. For example, I mean, we talk about the original term Yankee Doodle, which of course is that is one of the first American popular songs, if you will. And then we have all kinds of other things that have popped up over the years. Let me give you a couple of examples of how music can really surprise us. During the great swing era, Glenn Miller had one of the most famous big bands. Glenn Miller studied for a time with a man named Joseph Schillinger, who was in New York, and George Gershwin was another one of his students. And Schillinger had the idea that you could teach musical composition through mathematical study, and he published 2 huge books the size of telephone books. And Schillinger gave Glenn Miller an assignment, and Glenn Miller worked on it, and the melody he wrote was something like this. And some years later, he took that melody and lyrics were added to it. And people have no idea, all those couples that fell in love during World War II dancing to this thought that it was all about looking at the moon, and they didn't realize it was a mathematical exercise originally, but this is what happened to it. Another example, the film Laura with Gene Tierney, Vincent Price, Clifton Webb, Dana Andrews at 20th Century Fox. And Laura was an important film, but nobody knew it at the time. And the film ended up being given to then a young composer, David Raxon, and they wanted to use as a theme, believe it or not, Summertime by George Gershwin. Ira Gershwin wouldn't let them do it. And so then they decided to use Sophisticated Lady by Duke Ellington. Raxon wanted to write his own theme. And they said, all right, you've got a weekend. Go home and create something. He couldn't come up with anything. He had writer's block. And it was Sunday night. Monday morning, he had to go in and play for Otto Preminger and Darrell F. Zanuck and all these people. And so he sat down at the piano on that Sunday night. And he happened to come up with this. Took him just a couple minutes to do that, and this is what he ended up with. Those are just a couple of examples.
You've got a wealth of knowledge. I'm amazed.
Well,
so here's what I want people to do. I want them to go to your website and just learn from this guy. I'm telling you, I want to spend the whole day with you.
Well, we'll have to continue our discussion. What I always invite people to do, the website, of course, is culturalconservation.org. And the message I always have is that we need to respect the best of the past, which shouldn't be forgotten, the best of the present, which shouldn't be ignored, and the best of the future, which shouldn't be undiscovered. And of course, you, Dr. Tim Weir, are a true cultural conservationist, and you're helping me, helping us, helping the movement by getting this message out to people. And that's terribly, terribly important.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that we don't want to lose in our culture.
Don't want to tear it down, destroy it.
Yeah.
History, we got to live with it, and I'm coming back.
Well, please do. Please do. You have to come back sometime, do a show with me, and I know virtually nothing about chiropractic, so we can talk. You can do all the talking about that, and then we can talk about playing the organ and musical things together.
What a great show. Don't change the channel because we got more coming up. Thanks, Doc.
My pleasure. Mark my words.
My name is Anita. I was in an accident with whiplash, medium and lower back pain, and I came to Raleigh Injury Chiropractic, and I believe it was the best thing I ever done. The staff here is wonderful. Dr. Weir is great. I couldn't ask for nothing else better in Raleigh, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to maintain my health.
Hey, I'm Dr. Tim Weir. If you want results like Anita, call our office today, 919-790-1332. Call right now.
Uptone Pictures is a full-service script-to-screen production company which can help you create the proper messaging for any number of applications, with spacious state-of-the-art studio offering green screen, mocap, and practical stages, along with a team of professionals who will make you and your business shine. So what are you waiting for? Call us at 919-649-3587 and schedule your appointment today. It's time we put your imagination into motion.
Hi, this is Dr. Tim Weir. I treat hundreds of patients every year who've been injured in car accidents, and a lot of those could be avoided. The National Safety Council reports that cell phone use while driving leads to 1.6 million crashes each year. That's 1 out of 4 accidents. Do yourself a favor, and if you get a text while you're driving, ignore it. Getting a carton of milk isn't going to do any good if you're dead. Drive safe. Keep loving life. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Loving Life. Oh, wow. I'm telling you, this guy is amazing. Listen, it's all about finding what your creative abilities are and then just splurge on that. Just have a blast. Life is just about having a blast. Please join me on Facebook, Dr. Tim Weir, my website, drtimweir.com, my Twitter, Dr. Tim Weir. You would think I could come up with another name or something, but they're all Dr. Tim Weir, so just join me there. Stay in touch with me. I want you to become involved so you too can learn how to love life a little bit more. So until next week, keep loving life.